When you're super clear about your numbers, you have more confidence. But also, there's a whole element here for educating people. And when you educate people about everything that's included and give them options and choices, now you're having a different conversation. It's not a money conversation about the price of it. It's a value conversation, and it's a conversation about what's important to you and what would you like.
You're listening to the Profit by Design podcast, episode 22. You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire.
Hey, Profit Designers, are you dreaming of a 4-week vacation? If so, it's time to stop dreaming and start putting things into motion to make it happen. I've created a 4-week vacation jumpstart guide to help you with just that. Head on over to 4weekvacation.com and get your free jumpstart guide. And while you're there, be sure to check out our 4-week vacation retreat that's coming up in just a few weeks. Last year, I issued the 4-week vacation challenge to our participants. Most of them took me up on that challenge, and they're returning this year. 6 of us have taken our 4-week vacations already, and the rest are taking theirs in the next 12 to 18 months. The upcoming retreat has filled. If you want to get your name on the waiting list for 2020, be sure to get your application in now. All of that is available at 4weekvacation.com. Hey, Profit Designers. On today's episode, Mike and I got to interview Vicki Suiter. Vicki is the author of The Profit Bleed. It's a new book that's just come out in the last few months, and I've been getting to know Vicki. And what I really have been appreciating about her and her work is that she emphasizes we need to build profit into our budgeting, and we need to go beyond breaking even. And if you recall, on last week's episode, Mike and I talked about breaking even to thrive. So in today's episode, we're going to keep building on that topic, and we've got Vicki here to help guide us in that conversation. Vicki is a business consultant and coach, and she believes, and from her own experience, she has been proving for 25 years that good market or bad, raging competition or not, any contractor or designer can run a healthy, profitable business. And she's been helping hundreds of businesses achieve that kind of success over the last 25 years by helping people to see things differently, then giving them the tools they need to do things differently. Vicki enables her clients to get a grip on their business vision from day one, and then she shows them how to make that vision a reality. So you can see there's a lot of commonality in Vicki's work and what Mike and I believe in and what we've been sharing with you here on the Profit by Design podcast. So we are very eager to introduce Vicki to you and let you hear for yourself some of her great insights. So let's get rolling. All right, welcome, Vicki. I'm so excited to have you here. We are going to talk about The Profit Bleed, which is your latest book. And it's I know our profit designers can't see the cover of the book because this is an audio podcast, but I encourage you, after you listen to this episode, you're going to want to head over to Amazon and check out that cover. It's very captivating.
Oh, thanks.
So, Vicki, as we dive into this with you, can you share a little bit about your background and how you came to even write about the profit bleed, especially in contractors' businesses?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me as a guest. I'm delighted to be here. I started working with contractors over 30 years ago, and before I started my practice, I was working in corporate training. And I was married to a painting contractor, and I could see how he was really struggling with growing his business and being able to make a consistent profit. And it was like work would go down and then he'd be panicked, and then work would get really busy and then he would never be able to take any time off. And so I watched this roller coaster constantly happening. And so after our son was born, I decided that I wasn't going back to work for somebody else 60 to 70 hours a week, that I really wanted to spend time being a mom and also be able to work because that's what I needed to do. And I knew that industry could really get served well by my bringing my background in financial management and the work that I'd done with my husband and his business to really help that industry. And so my first few clients were design build contractors, and I just found that I loved the complexity of it and the people in it. I really love working with contractors. I think they're some of the hardest working people I know and some of the smartest. They rarely give themselves credit for how skilled so many of them are in what they do and their ability to manage so many parts and pieces and elements and complexity all at one time. And so it's that part of that I really love. And I love turning on the lights for people and having them be able to see how they can turn that really hard work into more profits and having more time and having more fun in their life. So and I just stayed with that vertical market. That's been my focus in the work that I've done with clients. It's been general contractors, subcontractors, developers, builders, interior designers.
And so, Vicki, you mentioned the word complexity. And that word really stands out to me. That's a word, Mike, if you remember at the retreat last year, we were talking about that, about how complex, and the more complex your business is, the harder it is to make it automated, sustainable, profitable. And contractors really have that struggle.
Yes, very much so. Because they're always working on all of the different parts, all of those complex parts. And part of what I try to help them do is to be able to see what are the most critical elements that they need to pay attention to keep their finger on the pulse of those critical elements that really drive their success. And I know that in listening to your podcast, you talked about one of your podcasts recently, you're talking about KPIs. And so for contractors, when they understand those critical things, then all of a sudden you get a little bit of elevation from it and you're able to see it and manage it more effectively.
Yes. And the other thing that you said in your opening statement there that really caught my attention is that so many of these guys don't give themselves credit for how intelligent they are and all the skills that they have because they juggle that complexity on a daily basis. And one area where they really don't give themselves enough credit is the money side of the business, math, numbers, accounting, all of that. It seems to be that area that we just want to put our head in the sand.
Well, and I don't think that they necessarily want to put their head in the sand. I think that there's a couple of things that happen. One, I think sometimes there's magical thinking, like it'll all work out if I just work hard enough. But more importantly, I think that there is an intimidation with numbers. I think that there's a lot of second guessing that people do about their ability to know what to look at or what to pay attention to. So I think it's more like a education and confidence thing than it is that I don't want to pay attention to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think the things that we don't quite understand, they're a little scary to look at. But what I really have come to appreciate, we've been taking so many of our clients through Profit First, which simplifies cash flow for small business owners. And in your book, The Profit Lead, what I really appreciate is how you just break it down step by step. These are the things to pay attention to. These are the numbers. And not only here are the numbers, but here are the formulas. Here's how you calculate this. So in your book, you made a statement, and I want to read it here. You said, numbers illuminate a pattern of behavior. They reveal beliefs that drive those behaviors. Numbers reveal choices. What you're showing in the Profit Lead is how we can pay attention to certain key performance indicators, certain numbers in our business, that underneath those numbers, there are choices that are being made. So can you speak to what are some of the numbers that we should be paying attention to in our businesses that point to some better choices we might be making?
So one of the places that I think of is when it comes to like pricing and how we do pricing and looking at the costs that it costs us to run a business. So a lot of times I'll hear from people who will say to me, gosh, I can't increase my prices. And I always make it clear to people that, there's only two ways to affect your bottom line. It's either increase revenue or decrease cost. There's only two ways to do either of those things. You can increase revenue by increasing actually your sales, how much you produce, or, buying additional, adding to the services that you already do, or by increasing your prices. And there's only two ways to reduce costs, literally cut costs, spend less money, or increase your production efficiency. And so when people come to me and they're not making the money that they want, their margins aren't where gross profit margins aren't where they should be, and then they say to me, but I can't increase my prices. Like I can't be competitive in the marketplace. And I always contend, and I say, I've been doing this for nearly 30 years, and I have to tell you, I've never told somebody that they should lower their prices. Never. And the thing is that what I say is when you know what your numbers really are, when you know what it costs you to run your business, and you know what your overhead break-even percentage is, then you can see with your eyes wide open, it's like the numbers don't lie. So now you have a choice. Either your overhead has to get reduced or your prices have to go up. And having done this for as many years as I do, I have some benchmarks and have some guidelines that I provide people. If they're a general or a sub, it's different. What should your overhead break-even percentage be? And if you can't, so that's one element of it, is that if you know your number and you know what that is, then you can't say, well, I'm just going to sell more, or it'll just work out, or I'll make up for it on the job. Like that just doesn't ever happen. And selling more when you're selling it at a price that you're losing money at, that's where my book even starts. It starts talking about, and that's a true story about a contractor that came to me who had gone from 3 million to 15 million. They made 500 at 3 million, but they lost 250,000 at 15 million because they thought they could do the volume game and just reduce their prices. But they didn't have a relationship with those numbers. And when they got a relationship with those numbers, when they were really clear about what their overhead was, then they could look at, oh, okay, I need to reduce my overhead because I've been throwing dollars at a company that was growing too fast and I didn't have the infrastructure to support it. And, oh, I've got to apply better markups and I have to increase my gross profit margin on my projects. I always say, when you can see it, you can do something about it. And in the case of that company, they did both of those things. But the other thing that happens is that when you have a relationship with your numbers, when you're clear about it, you start to have a different choice about how do I have to approach the conversation differently when I'm in a sales situation? Because sometimes it's just easier to say, well, I'll undercut my prices so I don't have to be good at sales. I can just give you the cheapest price. And then I'm frantic trying to and hoping and wishing that I'm going to make a profit. Well, what if instead you were really clear about your prices, you knew how much you had to mark up in order to make, a margin that was within the range that it should be for what you do, and that you were making a net profit that was supportive of you and the lifestyle that you want, and a range that's a good range for you, which there's some benchmarks for that kind of stuff, then you have more choices about how you're approaching running your business. Now you're asking a different set of questions, which is, well, how can I do that? Versus I'm at the mercy of what I think the market will bear. And trust me, nobody has a 10 and 5, 10% overhead and 5% profit and is in business for very long.
Yeah. Mike, I know she's touching a lot of chords with you. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so in your book as well, you talk about the budget and the importance of a budget. And I've been around a lot of people in this industry for a long time, including myself. And I always used to think of the budget almost like, well, it's like an afterthought, right? Like, why am I thinking about a budget? Because the numbers are going to be what the numbers are. I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to make money no matter what. And I'm going to increase volume and I'm going to, money is going to pour in the door, but the critical step there is really establishing the budget. And the budget needs to come from, like you mentioned, what your lifestyle is and, what your goals are. And Sabrina and I were talking about in our last episode, a break even to thrive. So establishing a break even / budget that allows you to thrive, both personally within business. I like, that portion of the book that Sabrina pulled out about, the options, right? So when you know what your numbers are and where your numbers need to be, it is an option, right? So you're creating an option for yourself to recognize, I'm going to make a decision that's going to help me meet or exceed my goal, or I'm going to make a poor decision right now that's going to send me kind of off track. One of the questions I have for you is, if a contractor wants to work with somebody like yourself, what would you recommend they do to kind of get over, almost feeling ashamed, right? To come to somebody and say, I really need help. This is where I am. So maybe talk a little bit about, I'm a contractor. I've been in business for a long time. I know a lot of stuff. Why should I work with somebody to get my numbers on track? And how do I not feel ashamed? Or how should I think about this from a mental perspective to kind of let somebody see all my darkest secrets and all my mess?
It's a great question. I would say that the question you would want to ask yourself is, well, first of all, I have this background underlying belief that everybody is always doing the best they can. And if they knew a different way to do it, they would. And that none of us have all of the answers. As business owners, we're oftentimes very isolated and we're making it up. Or, even if we, go talk to our pals at the trade shows or at, trade associations, that there's a conversation that's a little bit of a bravado conversation. It doesn't really get into the depth. And then we start comparing ourselves to other people. And we think that it's just, and all of us walk around like this, right? That we think it's just us that is like not getting it and not good enough or not smart enough or whatever. So I appreciate what your question is. And how I look at it is, nobody's perfect, and we all have those things that we could use input and feedback on. And if you look at going into a relationship with somebody who can help you and coach you in your business, really from the perspective of that's a partner who can bring something to the party that you don't necessarily bring, or that can improve on what you already have, or can help you take what you're doing to the next level. It's not about having it be a relationship of right and wrong, and I'm going to tell you what to do. It's really, my approach to working with clients is my goal is to extract from you what you already know and help you apply these principles about managing for results and knowing your numbers, having a relationship with those key indicators in your business, growing your team. I'm going to use everything that you already know, and we're going to just take that and apply it to these principles so that you can grow and expand on what you've already done. So it's, I think I don't know if I completely answered your question, Mike, but like my thinking about it is it's all about augmenting what you're doing in a way that brings you to the next level of you being able to have the life that you want, to be able to make more profits, have more time, and have more fun and joy in what you do again. And that requires us to find a community or an advisor who can help us do that more often than not. I mean, I've had a coach for all of the years of my business. People who are successful in business usually do.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Vicki, I was in a conversation 2 weeks ago with some clients of mine, and it was the pricing conversation. And I was telling them, because they were struggling to be profitable, and I was telling them, I really don't think this is about cutting expenses anymore. This is about raising your prices. Mm-hmm. And I was hearing a lot of, I don't know, we get the feedback that we're priced too high. And I said, I want you to read a book. It's called The Profit Lead. And so they, both owners, immediately read it and came back to the call the next week, and they were in the process of raising prices. So,
awesome.
Immediate impact. But beyond that, when we ask our retreat participants, what is your best book that you've read all year that's had the most impact? Guess what was listed? The Profit Lead.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So I really encourage our listeners, if you are struggling to price yourself appropriately, if you have been looking at, I've cut my price, or I've cut my expenses as much as I can, and especially if you're in the place of looking at, I can't afford to hire the people that I need to hire, I'm looking at cutting benefits for my team, that's when you really need to be reading The Profit Lead. So, and I want to get into that a little bit with you, because I've heard you talk about, in the construction industry especially, the cost of labor, and that we may not be pricing appropriately for future labor costs, in the next year to, 6 months to a year, that can creep up very quickly. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So it's interesting that when I look at how much people are paying for labor today versus 2 years ago, it's dramatically different. And it's important that, like, I have a client who does their time frame from contact to job start is 2 years. And so for them, when we talk about what their pricing is and talk about their bidding, I'm like, you need to be looking at what's going to cost you 2 years from now when you're actually producing that job, because it's going to cost you a whole lot more money. And so not only is it like more money in terms of gross wages, but I live here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And in San Francisco, the cost of an employee is way higher than it is in a number of other cities. So there's a mandatory 9 days, sick time. There is health insurance benefits. There's, so there's all those things. There's, like you said, 401k. There's employer costs for insurance. There's telephones. There's, vehicles. There's all kinds of costs that go into having that employee. And when you're really clear about what those numbers are when you're pricing, and you have all those numbers included in there, and that you're looking at, like my client who's got 2-year durations from contact to job start, even if it's 6 months, understand that there's always be a certain cost of living increase, and that you want to make sure that you're putting costs in there that are relevant to what that cost will be to you down the road. Because if you don't put that in there, then what happens is that comes right out of your bottom line. That just eats right into your profits when you actually do produce that work. So it's kind of a two-piece part, which is, one, plan for what it's going to cost you in the future when you actually may be doing that job. Larger the jobs, the longer the durations, there's a greater likelihood that that cost is going to go up. And then secondly, the other thing that can really help people build that confidence when they're pricing is get really clear about what that cost of having that employee is. And in my book, a reference that people can go to actually get a tool to let you get a good picture of exactly what that cost really is. And that can help you, again, be more confident and certain about what's my real cost, so that when you're bidding, you're not second guessing whether or not that price is too high or too low, or somebody pushes back on you. When you have that confidence and that certainty in your numbers, first of all, you exude a completely different demeanor. And then second of all, you're going to know where your no stop point is and when to walk away. And that is very different. And it's a very different conversation when you're in a sales relationship and a sales conversation than somebody comes to you and goes, if you can cut your price $5,000, I'll do it. And then you go, oh, okay. There goes your profit, right off the bat.
Well, and it's a downward spiral because, I work with business owners a lot on their hiring. In the construction industry, they have the greatest hiring challenges of any industry, and a number of historical factors that have created that problem. And so in order to hire the best people for your team, you have to be able to pay above average wages and salaries. And so if you're on the bidding end and you're having to cut your prices, you're never going to be able to afford the team that you need to grow the business and do it in a profitable way. So I really appreciate what you're sharing about being able to bid with confidence and stand behind the pricing, because ultimately that confidence is, I have a great team that I'm bringing to do this job.
Right.
Do you want the best, or do you want, the day laborer that I pick up down the street?
Well, and here's the other thing, because when you talk about that, Sabrina, the other part of that is when you have somebody who's not skilled and qualified to do the job well, then that job takes a lot longer. There's more problems. There's more repeats that are done. Like, trust me, you just paid for that 3 times over, whatever you would have paid for a more highly qualified person.
Well, yes. And, Mike, that reminds me of our conversation that we had last week on the podcast where we talked about breaking even to go into debt. That's really pricing to go into debt.
Right.
Sure. And do you notice, as I'm listening to, what you're saying, right? I have some of these old tendencies that come back, or like this little voice in my head that starts to say, well, I can go ahead and add everything into my pricing and then I'm never going to get another job again, right? And I'm going to be bidding myself out of the market.
Gremlin.
And, some of the things that I did to overcome that were I had to change my business model around a little bit to, number one, demographically, the jobs that we were going after, which required a higher level of professionalism and quality, that required less volume, but more expertise and the right people, on the bus, so to speak. So for the other guys and gals that are out there, and those thoughts are running through their head just like they are through mine, even though I know better, have you experienced some of your clients altering business model to change that? I know there's a lot of whole, sales systems and confidence, and there's a bunch of different things to it. But, do you find that going through this exploration also, create some new options for people to really sit down and think, well, maybe I just don't want to install screen doors every day. And,
right.
Maybe I do want to do, this higher end type of work.
Yes, Mike. So there's a couple of thoughts that occur to me as I'm listening to you. So one is, if you're going to serve smaller projects, smaller size jobs, then you need to have a service model that's in place, which means you're highly efficient in that you're doing work at a rate that lets you have a quick turnaround, and you've got an entire system that's really based on sort of the McDonald's model, right? It's like, it's quick, it's fast, you got a quick turnaround, and it's super efficient, and you have high margins. If you're going to do custom work, if you're going to do residential remodel, if you're going to do renovations, then what you want to understand is that when you're pricing and when you're looking at having that conversation with people about your prices, that it becomes twofold. One is, when you're super clear about your numbers, you have more confidence, but also there's a whole element here for educating people. And when you educate people about everything that's included and give them options and choices, now you're having a different conversation. It's not a money conversation about the price of it. It's a value conversation, and it's a conversation about what's important to you and what would you like. Like, one of the greatest stories I've got is a client who, when they first started working with me, were almost bankrupt, wanting to file bankruptcy. They had a ton of debt. They owed the IRS money. Neither of them had had a vacation together at any time in their business. Neither of them barely took 3 days off. They were making very little money in their business personally, like as a draw. And it was a constant grind and struggle every day. And one of the things that they took on was, I encouraged them not to file bankruptcy. I'm like, let's figure out a plan, and let's talk about what's the kind of jobs that you're doing and what's your pricing. And they used to just take whatever work was there. And today, a couple of years later, they are completely out of debt. They have money in reserve. They both take over $250,000 a year in salary, and they're doing the jobs that they love to do. Now, that wasn't magical that happened. What happened is that they got very purposeful about a couple of things. One, being really clear about their numbers, and then managing with their numbers, bidding better in terms of their profitability, building their team, and also going after the jobs that they want and the customers they want. So they stopped being just taking whatever came in the door, and they got intentional and purposeful about who they took as a customer, which completely transformed their reputation in the marketplace. Because people used to say to them, your prices are high, your prices are high. Well, quite frankly, their prices are higher now, but they don't get that conversation from people anymore. They tell people, our prices are higher, but let me explain to you why. And they've really worked at all parts of their business. Like, I know you guys talk about teams and the importance of that. I mean, it's a kind of a multifold thing, right? So it's like when you have a team that takes ownership and is efficient in production, and you have, overhead that's appropriate for the size of your business, and you're managing the job, and you're clear about what's really included in the project and your numbers and the job and the scope. The combination of all those things, the world's your oyster. And they're really good at communicating that with a prospective customer about who are we, what do we do, what's included, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What I find so challenging, Vicki, is when you're in the rat race, when you're working 90 hours a week because you're bidding everything and you're not in that sweet spot with your business, it's very hard to get the mental space freed up to start even analyzing, where do I start? It's like this big tangled mess, and where do I start? And I love how you're breaking it down and you're identifying, it's really a combination across 3 different areas, but it starts with getting a handle on your numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll have more confidence and you'll have more certainty. And that's super powerful because you can take more powerful actions then, right? It's like that when we eliminate the uncertainty and the confusion, we are so much more capable and competent about what we can do.
Absolutely. Now, another part of your book, you get into project management and the controls that can be put in place and things to track and meetings to have. And I know that's an area where a lot of profit bleeds out from a construction business. Can you speak some to that?
Yes. When you don't look at your numbers and you're not sitting down and having regular check-ins with your team about where you've been, where you are, and where you're headed, then we get onto this cycle of just working really hard and hoping that it turns out. And again, you can tell I'm a really big proponent of if I can see it, I can do something about it. So doing things like 2-week look-aheads. Looking ahead 2 weeks for a superintendent or a foreman or a job lead is not their natural thing to do. So like that one tool that I talk about in terms of doing a 2-week look ahead gives people an opportunity to lift up their heads, look out what's in front of them and ask the question, if I have to be here in 2 weeks, what are the most important things for me to focus on and do? So now I'm operating with the end in mind and working backwards. Now I'm going to increase my production efficiency dramatically because I'm not just moving to the next thing and the next thing. I've got focus about what it is that I want to accomplish, and it's going to drive what my most important actions are every day. And the same thing applies for doing a cost to complete, except it's a little bit of a bigger picture, which is you're looking out today and saying, based on what I know today, based on where we've been, based on the percentage complete we are on our job, where are we going to be? When's the job going to finish and what's it going to cost us to finish it? Now I'm looking from the bigger picture of the project and I'm asking the question, how can we get in on budget and what's it going to take to get there? Did I miss something in terms of a change order with the client? Is there something in scope I need to have a conversation about? It gives you an opportunity to get an eagle's view of where am I headed and what actions do I need to take in order to stay on time, on budget, and deliver as promised, which is fundamentally what the job is of a project manager or of a construction company, period. So those two things I see are the most critical things that you can do that will allow you to stay in front of where a project is headed so that you do not ever have a project that you lose money on. And every time I see, next to change orders, because change orders is the number one place I see contractors lose money, but doing those two things I've seen has made a dramatic difference in people's ability to come in on time, on budget, but also it makes a dramatic impact in terms of increasing your team's accountability, creating a success with your team so that they can win and that it's not all dependent on you as a manager or a senior leader to have it turn out. When your team is on board with what are the results and owning it with you, that's a game changer in terms of your ability to grow your business.
Absolutely. And I also hear that as it's the critical turning point where you shift from running around like a chicken with your head cut off, putting out fires all day long, to this business is running with some predictability. I might actually be able to put my cell phone down for a little while.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you have it on a system, which is part of what, I think you were referring to, Sabrina, when you have a schedule for, well, we do this and we do it faithfully every 2 weeks, then what you can know is I've got a system that will support me having that happen consistently. Even if you just practiced one thing for 6 months, if you're listening and you're a contractor, if you just practice doing the 2-week look ahead, the way that I've got it outlined in the book, you will exponentially increase your efficiency on your jobs.
Wow.
And your team will become stronger as a result of it.
Real quick, without getting so deep into the weeds on that, what's a tip for somebody to get their team on board with the 2-week look aheads and really being accountable for, the budget and the profitability of the project? And, what I used to call, I found that so many people in the industry have compartmentalized thinking, everything, like when you construction business, you're getting paid by the day to be a laborer, then you're getting paid by the day to be a carpenter. And the industry itself kind of instills this compartmental behavior of by the day.
Mm-hmm.
And, we really need, especially our superintendents, PMs, upper management, and even lead carpenters on the job to really think about beyond the day, right? We need to be looking at 2 weeks ahead. We need to be looking at the finish line of the project and what we can do to overcome obstacles now and be more proactive instead of reactive to create profitability. But I know the most painful part of this whole entire thing is, as a business owner or a business manager, maybe somebody who's listening to this and says, you know what, that's right. Starting Monday, we're going to start 2-week look aheads. So what's a quick tip for somebody to try to do an entry-level conversation with their employees, to get some buy-in, to make little steps, start creating this new system and, just have it gain traction and become integral part of how the business operates?
Mm-hmm. So there's two things I would say really quick, Mike, one is that you actually get buy-in and agreement with them. So you sit down and you look at, first of all, it's important to understand that people fundamentally don't change without having some problem or breakdown. So if you never talk to your team, that foreman, about what's not working on that project or some problems, then you're going to be kind of hitting them from left field going, well, here's another thing for you to do. But if you've been having a conversation with that foreman that says, you know what, we keep missing these deadlines or that deadline, and, we're missing the mark here. We didn't get that sub called. They weren't on the job when they needed to be. That material wasn't ordered on time. If you've been having those conversations, then you come to the foreman and you say, listen, you know how we've been having these problems. I think I've got this solution for us that can really help you and help me and help you and I stay on the same page about what needs to happen so that we can better plan for that. Would you be open to that? And then I would sit down and I would go through it, and maybe you modify it, and then you get agreement about how often you're going to sit down and go over it. And when I've done this with clients, this isn't like an overnight kind of thing because they're not used to thinking that way. So if you set a meeting for every 2 weeks and you go, every Thursday at 8 a.m., we're going to sit down and we're going to go through this. And I want you to come having thought about what those things are that need to happen in the next 2 weeks from your perspective. And that also requires a schedule, I will say. So if you don't have any schedule, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But you have a schedule, and then when they show up in 2 weeks, the report may not be filled out. And then you slowly but surely get them so that you walk them through how to do that week after week. And pretty soon what you're going to find is they actually do show up to the meeting with it filled out. Now, the transformation that just happened over that time is they've started to think on their own about what needs to happen and be proactive, and you start having a different conversation with them when they show up, like, so tell me what you think, tell me how you're going to do that, how can that work? Now you're in a proactive conversation with them versus a reporting conversation, because reporting is misery. They don't want to just have another thing to do. That would what it would be. The tip I would say is just be patient, be consistent, do it every 2 weeks, and look at it like it's a solution to a problem. Be clear about what the problem is, then be clear about what the goal is, and then this is just a tool that's going to help you get from where you are to where you want to be.
I was going to say, I just have one little tip. So we do 2-week look aheads, but we do it every single week. So we're actually, looking out 2 weeks every week so that we're pushing. The other thing too, which is a good tip for anybody, is to incorporate your subcontractors into the 2-week look ahead process. Not necessarily coming into your office for a meeting, but you ask them to provide you with their 2-week look ahead. Not only is your team now looking at what the subcontractors are bringing to the table, but it allows you to reorganize what your project priorities are from a project planning perspective and adjust the subcontractor priorities to meet the overall success plan of the project.
That's great, Mike.
That's it.
Those are awesome tips. Mm-hmm. I was just going to jump in there and say, Vicki, I heard you say we have to be patient. And we can't expect our team members to change overnight. And that really is critical, is to go into that conversation as the business owner with an appropriate expectation that a light switch is not going to go on and it's not going to be different overnight. And it's through the course of consistently asking from week to week or every other week for this information and let's have this discussion, but doing it from the place of, I want to make you, project manager, I want to make your life easier. And I think I have a solution for us. Let's work on this together.
Mm-hmm.
So, Vicki, this has been an illuminating conversation. I know, Mike, you've jumped in and you've shared some really good tips and pointers and ideas. We've probably got our profit designers' heads spinning. And even for those who are listening who are not in the construction industry, these are things that we need to be paying attention to in our own businesses. All the things that we've talked about here. So, Vicki, where could our listeners get more information? And when we came onto the call, you told me about this phenomenal gift that you're going to offer them. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So people can get my book, The Profit Bleed, for free for a limited amount of time, just for paying shipping and handling of $7.95. And when they buy the book, there's an opportunity to be able to get all of the resources that I referenced in the book that you can go and download one at a time, or there's an opportunity to get the whole bundle of all of those resources at one time. So you might want to look at that if that's interest to you, and it includes things like the 2-week look ahead and other tools that you can implement based on what is in the book. So people can get that at theprofitbleed.com/free.
Wow. Thank you so much, Vicki. And I have to tell our listeners, there are so many resources that she has in this book for you. So the book is a very fast read. You can probably read it in a couple hours. It's not overwhelming. It's not intimidating. And there's a ton of resources that go along with the book. And now Vicki's making this very generous offer that you can get the book for free. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vicki.
Thanks, Vicki. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you, guys. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.